So, Paul, first of all, it's your birthday this week. So I want
Oh,
to say happy birthday. I dressed for the occasion in my party dress just for you, my Star Child dress.
you look great.
Well, so do you. And you were just showing me a different kind of costume. Your blue painted gloves. So obviously there's lots to discuss with you, but besides wishing you a happy birthday, I want to talk about the new art exhibit Black Series you have coming up at the Wentworth Gallery at different locations. You'll be popping in and out. Like, what's this series all about? I know you've had other shows before.
Well, there's a lot in this exhibit, a lot of new pieces. Um, Black Series was a bunch of paintings I did on black canvas. Usually you paint on white canvas, but the cool thing about black is it makes the colors a little moodier, but it also makes them come forward. They seem to come out from the canvas. So did a bunch of those and a bunch of other ones. So a lot of really big pieces, and I'm just having a great time.
Awesome. Well, I did a little research. I mean, obviously, you're known in KISS for a different sort of painting, face painting. Maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But I was doing some research into your artistic background. I was today years old when I found out that it's you designed the KISS logo. Did you not? Like one of the most famous band logos in the history
Well,
of rock.
let me be as clear on that.
Okay.
Ace really came up with the concept and an early version of the logo. The one that everybody sees is actually the actual one that I did. We've used that for going on 50 years now, but
Yeah.
Ace really came up with the original idea, although the logo that you see is one that I did.
How did it change when you fine tuned it or whatever?
Very good question. Um, it's got in the proportions of the letters changed and the outline around it changed. It was a much more basic um, logo. It was basically what made it what it was the S's, the lightning bolt S's, but everything got really refined, and proportions and relationships of different parts of the letters that all changed.
Well, another interesting thing when we're talking about early design and fine tuning it, I think it's kind of ironic that you, as an artist in the group, your face paint, as we were talking, I was mentioning, is the simplest. It's the simplest if someone's trying to be a member of KISS for Halloween and they're not really great at painting. Yours would probably be the one they do because it's the simplest design. So I want to talk about the bandit because that's another thing I found out. Thank you, Google. The bandit makeup, which is very different. How did that start? And then you ended up doing the star instead.
Well, um, the way that actually came about was the star was first,
Oh,
and it's not quite so simple because you're painting a flat object on a 3D face. So you have to have it look like a star from the front, and yet because of your nose, you have to play with the perspective. Anyway,
okay.
um, so I did the star first, and then the president of the record label early on said to me, "Well, it's kind of it's kind of swishy, it's kind of effeminate, or whatever." He also didn't wasn't crazy about the way I moved around on stage. He thought, you should be more macho, you know, and I thought, okay, I'll be a sport and at least try some of this. So I just came up with this Lone Ranger, bandit as it became known. And it lasted maybe a month.
Oh,
And I just went, you know what? My gig, my face, my makeup. And I just went back to it. So uh, a lot of people believe that came first, but it actually
mm.
didn't. It came after.
Well, how many public appearances, photo shoots, or shows did you do? Because if you Google KISS Bandit or Paul Stanley Bandit, like quite a good number of images come out. I think some people have taken the ball and run with it. Like there are screensavers. People have made merch with this kind of alternate image of your face.
Hmm.
How long a run did the Bandit have?
I'd say a month.
I mean, but like, did you do a photo shoot? Like, where are these images
Oh
coming
yeah,
from?
there's actually two photo shoots by a photographer named Rayanne Rubenstein, and one of them has me in the star, the Star Child, and then the other one has me in the Bandit. So there's two very similar photo shoots, um, but I think there was one real photo shoot, and that was
Hmm.
Rayanne's, and then there was a bunch of live pictures.
Well, I'm curious about, obviously as, Ace or Peter left the band and like Vinny and Eric came in, there were new characters, the Unk Warrior and the Fox that came in. Um, I'm curious why that makeup never got recycled. You already must have had like the idea of how to paint it when other members came in, maybe not necessarily them, but other members came in. Why didn't someone else take the Bandit role?
Good question. It didn't. It never crossed our minds. Um, you know, we came up with two new characters, and I don't think that ever really worked. And once we did the reunion with Ace and Peter, after that, we said, well, we've spent a good part of our lives and busted our asses to make um, these four characters, and to get rid of them again and come up with something else, it wasn't going to happen. At that point, we knew that the characters had transcended the people behind them. I mean, loads of people around the world knew Kiss and knew the makeups, but didn't necessarily know the people behind it. So
Mm.
um, to forsake that and to handicap ourselves wasn't going to happen. So we went back to, we continued with the four original personas.
Interesting. I mean, I liked the Bandit look, but I feel it almost was a little too similar to Ace's look in that it was
Hmm.
two kind of shapes symmetrically around the eyes as opposed to the asymmetry of the star. So I feel like you differentiated, but I'm very curious about the stuff you were saying about, was it Neil Bogart?
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean, is
Neil.
this scene going to be in Spinning Gold?
Um,
I
I
want
don't
it to
really
be.
know much about spinning gold because it's really not. It has nothing to do with us, and I have no idea. I really don't know anything about that,
Okay.
and it's certainly not a film that we are affiliated with.
Will be in your own biopic. I've heard there's a Kiss biopic in the works. I'm excited to see both these films, to be honest. Will this kind of confrontation you had with Neil over the Bandit versus Star Child be in the Kiss biopic? Or what can you
I,
tell me about it?
I don't think that it's that. I mean, it's
Okay.
interesting, but I don't think it's. I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know yet. I know the photos of us signing with Neil. I think we took these pictures at the Fillmore East when we did a press show there, and I had the Bandit makeup there, and then I
Whoa.
perfected it a bit, and then I just went, no, I don't want to do this. It's just it has nothing to do with me. What's the Bandit?
Well,
I
in general, the reason I'm interested in that in the Neil thing that you said is you saying that he had an issue with you being effeminate or whatever.
I really don't know what his issue was. I it was it he just you know he didn't think it was the way to go with the band. But then again, Neil also, when he signed us, wanted us to take off the makeup. So um, that it's one person's opinion, and at some point you just have to say, well, look, when it came down to, I'll sign you, but you take off the makeup, you said, well, then you're not going to sign us.
I've
So
never heard this story. You can see the shock on my face hearing this.
yeah,
I
no.
mean, what?
Well, when Neil heard us before he ever saw us, our demo with Strutter and I think it was Deuce and Watching You and She, I think were on the demo. And then he wanted to sign us, and then he saw us, and it was like, whoa, 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 you know. And it was like, well, this is us. This is who we are. If it's either you take it or leave it. It's our way or the highway.
Wow. Well, clearly you've had a long track record of sticking to your guns, your love guns. Sorry for the terrible pun. And it all working out. I like my puns. But since we're talking about makeup removal, this year marks the incredibly 40th anniversary. 40th anniversary of when Kiss took the makeup off in that famous press conference they aired on a Sunday night on MTV. And it was 1983. So, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, because I feel like that what I've read is that you kind of, I mean, obviously Kiss commercially thrived during that era. It was a whole new chapter for Kiss, but like, I feel like you really embraced it as a frontman. I mean, I don't know if there was any trepidation about showing your face to the world after all that time.
No, I very much wanted to do it. Matter of fact, um, I was hoping we would have done it with the Creatures of the Night album,
Hmm.
but understandably, it was a much, much bigger step for Gene, because Gene's persona is so strong and was so strong that to give that up was a big, 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 big commitment and sacrifice, if you will. So he was a little reluctant, and we waited. But when Creatures, although it was arguably one of the top albums we did, and when it didn't sell through the way we hoped it would, I think Gene saw the writing on the wall. It
Mm.
really came down to me, people were listening to our music with their eyes, and they didn't like what they were seeing anymore. So yeah, so that was, we took it off, and it's kind of interesting because MTV thankfully made a big deal about it. But then again, you have to also remember that there were only two original members who had worn the makeup, since the beginning. So
Yeah.
so it was kind of like, it thankfully they did it, and it got a lot of coverage, and lo and behold, Lick It Up came out and was almost immediately a platinum album. So I think I was right.
You were right once again, but it is interesting. I just recently rewatched, on YouTube that press conference, and I saw it as a little kid, and I remember it being, as you say, a big deal. But when I watched it back, maybe it's just because I'm used to kind of how like TV looks, a little splashy. It's a pretty like low key event. Like it's very quiet. There's no splashy graphics like unmasked, just like very calm. JJ Jackson with his calm like FM radio voice is just doing his voiceover. It's like kind of like serious and low key. It's not like this big, especially when we think of Kiss as having pyro and blood spitting stuff. It's actually like something that would be on like PBS or something. Like, was that
Yeah.
intentional?
Um, I don't remember 100%, but I have to say that at that point we were pretty amenable to anything. Uh,
Mm.
the idea that it was going to be covered and carried on MTV was big, big news, and only validated and kind of confirmed the idea that it was big news.
So to just take it full circle and get back to your art stuff, it's your other kind of painting. If you enjoyed having the makeup off from 1983 to 96 and ish, and obviously Kiss thrived commercially during that time, How did you feel about putting it back on? Were you resistant to that? Did you find it a regression in any way or anything like that?
Felt so it felt so right.
Mm,
It's interesting because for years, I think Gina and I both said never do it again.
hmm
Uh, the idea of bringing back Ace and Peter was out of the question. It had just been too much drudgery, and there was no reason to do it. And then it kind of reached a point where it became, wow, we're not going to live forever, and everybody's getting older. That's pretty funny when you realize how many years ago the reunion was. But we kind of, maybe this will work out. Maybe we can revive the original band. Everybody learns from their mistakes, and we go forward. So it was exciting. It was it was exciting to do something I never imagined doing again. And hell yeah, when we put on the makeup and we were together, wow, it's Kiss. Kiss is back. So it was there was no trepidation, and it
okay.
was only exciting, really exciting.
And how on earth did the Tupac Grammys thing happen? Like, I imagine there was any number of artists that would have been thrilled to be on stage and introduce that moment when you guys surprised everyone at I believe it was the 1996 Grammys, but it was Tupac. I don't know if he was a fan, if Ken Ehrlich put that together. He's big into the mashups. How did that happen?
Um, my guess would be that Ken came up with it, and it was a great contrast, and also nobody knew we were going to do it. People on the show didn't know we were going to do it. Um, we literally got ourselves geared up for it and took a like one of those, we call them disco buses, the party bus, and went to, I think it was the Greek Theater, and went backstage. Everybody was shocked. Um, and Tupac introduced us, and we came out. And I have to say, I was kind of, I was nervous. I was wondering, how are people going to receive this? Are they going to embrace this? Are they going to think it's a joke? Uh,
Hmm.
and we walked out, and I'm looking at all these current bands who are suddenly transported, and jaws dropped, and people were just it was an amazing moment for me and for the band. It was an amazing moment for me because I saw that, yeah, we were missed, and just like I thought we would never do it again, I think the audience thought it was gone, and it came back. So it was uh, it was momentous. And then literally we left. No interview, nothing. Did it, walked out, did the award, and left.
Poof of smoke or
Yeah,
figurative smoke, if not
yeah.
literal. So the last question I have about that is, all these years later, I've read that you guys, or at least you and Gene, still do your own makeup. Obviously, you could hire any makeup artist in the world to print you guys before a show or a photo shoot. Why do you? Is that true? And if so, why do you do it yourself still?
All four of us do our own makeup.
Really?
Oh yeah, I can't imagine anything else. It's a rite of passage. It's a prepping for the match. Uh, it's putting on your battle gear, and it's a transformation, not just in terms of appearance, but in terms of how you're thinking. So to sit in a chair and have somebody do my makeup, no way. It's part of me, and I want it to be done by me. Um, and interestingly, when Eric came into the band, Tommy, Um, everybody, I don't know how to put it, but they knew how to do it. Uh, it's what we do.
I have read in a story, I don't know if it's true, you can tell me if it's true, that the one of the reasons why you do your own makeup is because when you hired, or Casablanca hired a makeup artist to do the makeup on your first album cover, and you guys weren't really happy with it. And the makeup does look a little different, the proportions on the face. Is this true, or is this just fiction?
It's part fiction. Um, everybody did their makeup on that first album cover except Peter.
Mm.
Someone else did Peter's makeup. Kind of looked like looked like Lion King or something. It looked, it looked. It wasn't the way Peter was doing his makeup. It
Mm.
was somebody's interpretation of cat makeup. So it was
Okay.
only Peter. But I think we've always, it's always been important to the band to um, be the ones to do that transformation. I don't want to lay back with my eyes closed and then open them up and look in the mirror and go, oh, there he is.
Well, it's definitely worked out, you guys, with you certainly. Like I said, sticking to your guns. So going back to the art stuff and going back to the Wentworth guy, I know you're like, you've got your paint hand right there and you're in your studio right now. When I was doing, again, my research, you were hanging out with Andy Warhol in the 70s and 80s in that art scene, right? I imagine he completely appreciated and got what Kiss was about. And I'm curious if he had any influence on your art or Kiss in general. Like, I really think he probably completely got what you were doing.
Andy would come to our after show parties in New York. And Andy was iconic. My One of my biggest regrets, and I don't have a lot of regrets, was Andy would say, "Come on down to the factory, and I'll do your portrait." I just never made it down. So,
Mm.
um, his scene was different. Um, I certainly wasn't a part of it, um, um, but Andy was. No, as time went on, there was after as Andy's career and art continued, Jean-Michel Basquiat came and those were things that I kind of missed. I was aware of it, and but I was usually gone by then. I was always on tour. We literally were living on the road. Um, I showed up once at the apartment I was living in, and the doorman was going to call the police because I wanted to go upstairs, and he didn't believe I lived there. So,
Was this in the makeup era where he wouldn't have recognized your face, like
yeah,
your unpainted face? I
yeah,
see. When
new
did since you obviously were so busy with that, when did you start painting? When did you have time to start painting?
I started painting right around 2001.
Okay.
Um, I was going through some crazy, I want to say crazy. I was going through some tough personal times. And a friend of mine said, "You should paint." And I was like, I mean, that was like so left field to me. But somehow I went, hmm. And I went out and I bought paints and an easel and brushes and just decided, to use painting almost as a form of therapy. It was just a way for me to kind of like purge, kind of like, um, you know, um, kind of like stream of consciousness, but using color. And I was enjoying it. The first thing I did was self-portrait, and lo and behold, people knew it was me. So, that was a good step. And I never painted with the idea of anybody really seeing it. I had a few pieces up in the house, and people would come over and go, "Who did that? Who's the artist?" Because I wouldn't sign them. And at some point, somebody said to me, a guy I had met in Maui said, "Why don't you do a show here?" And I couldn't imagine doing, really, and I did it, and people purchased my art, and it was like, I was shocked, and that was really the start. I just kept painting anyway, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I guess I got better and better and better. So it's been phenomenal. It's nothing I ever expected to do, but it's become a big part of my life. I enjoy it. I think about it a lot, and I paint almost every day, especially with a show coming up, and there's 4 shows coming up. So
Hmm.
I want to make sure that there's a lot of new work and that it's representative of what I'm doing right now. There's always um, pieces or giclées, as they're called, which are like high res scans on canvas. There's always things that are available um, that are more from the past, but pretty much all the originals are gone. So
Mm.
um, there's new paintings. They're they're sold pretty quickly.
Do you mind me asking, you said that you were going through some hard times in 2001, a while back, but that sparked this, I don't want to call it a hobby, obviously it's professional, you're making money, you're selling, but sparked this side career of yours. What was, as comfortable as you're willing to say, what was
Oh, I'm
going on?
totally comfortable. I was getting divorced,
Okay.
and that was really tough, and kind of going from having uh, a wife and a child to sharing a child and not having a wife, and having a house that was basically empty. So it was a big shock, and it was difficult. And painting was a good outlet. It didn't solve everything, but it beat screaming in the shower.
No, I'm glad it helped. I'm glad it helped. Thank you for sharing that with me. So I've been talking about a lot of occasions, it's your birthday this week. I talked about the, anniversary of the makeup coming off. This month, January 30th, is actually the 50th anniversary of Kiss's first show.
Yep.
I mean, I know that there are still some end of the road dates and stuff going through July and stuff, but 50 years on, are you planning anything special to commemorate this occasion?
The fact that we still not only survive but thrive is special enough. Um, there's nothing special to do. Um, I'm thrilled that we're still here. Uh, I'm thrilled that the fans are still here. The fans seem thrilled that we're still here, and there's this is definitely, we're coming to the end of this run, so to speak. We pretty much know when we're ending and where we're ending, and that's it. This isn't, this tour, interestingly, seems to go on forever.
Yeah.
That's because we lost 2 years to COVID.
Yep.
So, people go, "Oh my God, this tour." Well, yeah, there's 2 years that didn't count, and it's a big world. So there have been some countries that I thought we were finished with, and the fans and the promoters wanted us to come back. So we have, shows to do, but the end is in sight. more so than some people know. But we'll have an announcement about that in the not too distant future.
Is it not July in Norway? When I was looking at the dates on your website, that was the last one that was
Well,
on the books, or that was on your site.
it would only make sense for us to play the States, and I think it would make sense that we would end where we started.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Detroit, but yeah, that would. Are you going to play the Coventry on your last show, on your last tour?
You know, Coventry doesn't exist anymore. I think it got turned into, when we first played it, it was called Popcorn, and they changed the name almost immediately to Coventry. And I think now it's like a veterans hall, or a,
Mm.
it it was I think even when it was Coventry, it had been like a Polish dance hall or something. Um, it would be fun, you know, it would be fun to go back and do that, but it doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, it would be fun because, when I've, since I've been talking so much about the evolution of Kiss's makeup, the different versions of it on and off, I've seen photos from that, and you're wearing makeup, but it's more like just like the glam rock makeup of the day. It's not like the full on facial characters. I don't know if that's something Neil Bogart saw before he saw what we know is Kiss's faces.
I think I'm just trying to remember, but I know that there were shows probably at Coventry, but certainly at the Diplomat, where we were, we had what became known as Kiss makeup,
Right.
scar on my eye, and you know, Gene had his top knot, and so I think there's Coventry footage. I think there's Coventry footage with us in Kiss regalia. I know there is.
I'm just according to Wikipedia, the shows that you did in January. I'm looking January 30th to February 1st, which were according to Wikipedia. Hope I, tried to do my research best I could. You did not have the full on
That's
vision yet.
Yes. I think that's, and there was nobody there. That literally was about 5 people there.
Crazy.
Who were friends of ours, and that was it. The place was empty, and but we were playing Strutter and Deuce and Black Diamond and Firehouse. We were playing all the songs that made up the first and part of the second album.
Wow.
All those songs were already written and rehearsed.
And it's interesting because I just recently watched the Kistery docuseries that you put out, and
And
it's so good. But I think it's really interesting. I don't think a lot of people, probably realize, because Kiss became so huge, and 50 years later, here we are still talking about Kiss, still selling out stadiums. But it was far from an overnight thing for you guys. You talk about nobody being at the first gig. I didn't realize it took a few albums in.
Oh my God. Yeah, people sometimes, when we became successful, somehow people thought that we were like in an avenue, and um like we were some sort. And it was interesting because, yeah, we even when I mean, it took 3 albums, and it took Kiss Alive
Mm-hmm.
to break the band. The first 3 albums barely made a dent. The only thing it did was expose us as a band, which was a great thing, because what we saw was that people were coming to see us and people were loving it, but they weren't buying the albums. And that was basically because the albums didn't sound like we sounded live.
Mm.
I mean, we went from clubs around the country, and us being in a station wagon, to us being third on the bill in theaters, to second on the bill, to finally headlining theaters, um, and then working our ways into the arenas and stadiums. So um, overnight, that's a
Definitely.
long.
I imagine when you were playing third on the bill somewhere, the bands that were playing second to last and headlining were like, crap, when I got to follow that, because you were a live spectacle. Besides the look, of course, as you just mentioned, Kiss Alive is what sold you guys in the end. Were there any moments where some big star had to follow you and they were like, we're screwed?
I think a lot of bands that had to follow us knew that they were screwed. Initially, they didn't know that. Certainly, there were some bands who, when they would see us, would start chuckling. They weren't chuckling after we played. So, um, and also, what we were doing was so new back then that we could get away with things that you can't do anymore because the headliner doesn't let you. You know,
Hmm.
there's contracts that say what you can and can't do. So we literally, I mean, there were headliners who would go on with a Kiss sign hanging behind them. We put up the Kiss sign. We didn't take it down. You know, um, and all the pyro that was, nobody thought ahead. Um, well, is that band going to use pyro, and do they have a sign and this and that? It was all uncharted territory. So um, we basically did what we wanted to, and quickly got a reputation that made it difficult to find gigs. We
Hmm.
did a point where Neil Bogart had us come into his office in Los Angeles, and so help me, um, he said, it's becoming impossible to get you on any shows. Could you possibly play, you know, worse? Could you play, you know, not play the way you do? We looked at each other. No, you know, that was like the weirdest thing. I, I it was like, you want us to like suck, you know? Um, so yeah, it became difficult. By the time Kiss Alive was breaking, that was a lifesaver for us because it really had become almost impossible to find bands that would let us open.
I guess being a really such a good live band that you're a threat to other bands is a good problem to have. And
It's a very good problem. And I do remember very distinctly, we were very friendly with a lot of bands, but we also had the very conscious mentality. We love them. Now let's go out and kill them. You know, those are great guys, but we're here. Okay, when we hit the stage, that's no different than um, boxers or some MMA fighters. They may actually like each other. You get in the octagon, and it's about your sport.
mm-hmm. Well, here we are 50 years later, and all the decisions you made, uh, yourself and collectively as Kiss, have clearly paid off. Have you thought about what it's going to be like when you do that final show, which might be in New York or Detroit, but you said in the States? Like, have you envisioned not just things like anything special or set list or whatever, but like it's gonna be very emotional, I imagine.
Oh, more so than I know. Um, it's this. There's going to be some tears shed for sure. This is. You got to remember that Gene and I started this together when I was 17 and he was 20, 21, and it's 50 years later. We've lived pretty interesting lives, and we have families and children, and huge, you know, sales in terms of albums and concerts. So it's a big part of who we are. It's a big part of our lives. So that final show, yeah, that's momentous, and it's going to hit harder than I think we know, and we know it's going to hit hard.
Yeah. Is it really, really the end, or is it going to be maybe more something like the way Elton John is no longer going to tour, but he hasn't ruled out things like one-off shows here or there, or residency in Vegas or some other kind of location where he stays put? Kiss on Broadway, like, is there any, or is it really going to be the last show you ever do?
I really can't say, but it is the last of any kind of regular shows or touring. Um, it's just it's just time. It's and in the same way, it's time consuming, and physically it's grueling
Yeah.
to to do what we do. It's hell, if I could go out on stage in my jeans and a t-shirt, do this another 10, 15 years easily. But what we do is a whole different, it's a whole different sport. I mean, we're athletes. We're running around on stage with 30, 40, 50 pounds of gear. And
Mm.
it's just, it's not possible to do it that much longer. So we're not like other bands. So
Well,
will we do more shows or one-offs? I really have no idea. But this is a real clear mindset that you know the touring days and doing those kind of shows, that's over.
I mean, it's understandable because, that, certainly not to get too dark or whatever, but there have been, some quite famous high profile situations of musicians who have pushed themselves to tour, probably, definitely longer than they should have. And, at times there were disastrous or tragic circumstances. I'm thinking about Prince or Tom Petty or stuff like that, so have you thought about anything about that, about like worrying about injury? I mean, you wear these
Well,
high shoes and
let's not, let's not negate, when we're talking about most of those people, let's not negate drugs.
yeah.
That, you know, the, a lot of the people who you might talk about didn't die from overexertion. They died from drug use or alcohol abuse and drugs, or or mental issues where they took their own lives. So um, uh, I'm up here. I'm 100%. My body's pretty damn good, although it's been repaired. You know, death. I've had both my shoulders, both rotator cuffs torn and surgically repaired. I popped a bicep tendon, that's been surgically repaired. I tore both knees, the meniscus in both knees, that's been surgically repaired. I had a hip replacement. So, but it's like going into the shop, the body shop. And when your car rolls out, you're good for another 50,000 miles. So I'm fine. The potential for real physical damage or worse, when you take drugs and abusing yourself out of the equation, it minimizes that a lot.
Well, you are the bionic man. They have the technology. I mean, I see you on Instagram, doing these long bike rides and stuff. Clearly in good shape, but I'm glad that, you kind of made the decision to sort of go out, you know, um, on top or whatever. And I hope to be at the end of the road show, wherever it may be when it happens. But in the meantime, I have the dates here. Your Wentworth Gallery art shows are February 3rd in Hollywood, Florida, February 4th in Boca Raton, and February 24th in Bethesda, and then February 25th in McLean, Virginia. Is there anything else you want to say about what to expect from these shows, these art shows, I mean?
Well, hopefully I'll get to at the very least wave to you and say hi. Um, and you know, don't feel like you need to explain your opinion. That art is something like music. You like it or you don't, and you don't need an education. The person who tells you um, that you do is usually a critic who's being paid, and that person wants you to believe that you need them. So, you know, find what you like and enjoy it. And if you want to paint, paint. You know, the there's loads of people in the world who are going to tell you what's impossible. Don't be one of them, not when it comes to you.
Seems like that kind of mentality has served you well throughout your whole career. So once again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating conversation about various different types of painting, and happy birthday to you. And I'll see you at an art gallery or in an arena very soon.
I'll be looking for you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. This has been a real delight.